Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Meet Your Brownfield Team, which will be followed by an EPA Multipurpose Assessment, Cleanup and Revolving Loan Fund, or MARC grant update. The new FY 2022 guidelines were just released yesterday, so you're the first to hear about the changes and what to expect. I'm Jean Hammerman, the Executive Director of the Center for Creative Land Recycling, or CCLR, and it is my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the CCLR team. This webinar brings together Brownfield practitioners from EPA Region 9, which includes the states and tribal communities of Arizona, California, Hawaii, Nevada, tribal nations, and the Pacific Islands. And we hope you'll be an active participant in the state breakout rooms and take away two things from this webinar. First, information about support services and resources for brownfield redevelopment. And second, a list of people you can call at CCLR, at EPA, GROUNDWORK, your state environmental agency, or colleagues you meet in your breakout room. I'm going to briefly introduce you to the CCLR and the CCLR team before I hand this off to EPA. Next slide. CCLR has been championing the beneficial reuse of environmentally impacted and underutilized properties for over 23 years. We are EPA's technical assistance to Brownfield, or a TAB provider in Region 9 for over a decade. Many of you have worked with us, and many of you have worked with Ignacio de Reed on your projects. We are thrilled to be the TAB provider for another 5 years, and we hope to see many projects through to completion during this time. We remain committed to our mission to promote the equitable, sustainable, and responsible reuse of environmentally impacted properties. Next slide. Here's how we work with land reuse practitioners. We answer your questions about the redevelopment process. We organize webinars on diverse topics, and once upon a time, we held in-person workshops, which we hope to bring back in 2022. We've trained tens of thousands of practitioners in the last decade. We send you newsletters with information about grants and news and workshops. If you aren't getting our newsletter directly and you need to sign up, and look for a link to do that in the chat. We review your EPA MARC grant applications and raise your chances of success. We've brought in millions of dollars in Region 9. Next, we have a talented team here to support you. Here are our operations and communications team. Claire, our operations and program manager, who organized today's webinar. Rachel, our communications manager, who you should be in touch with if you have any information that you'd like to share in our newsletter. Annika, our communications and outreach coordinator, and Devin, our program associate. They are all on the webinar and looking forward to facilitating our breakout rooms. Next. Here is our technical assistance delivery team. Ignacio, Joelle, Ellie, Denise, and Paul, and they really are as friendly as they look. And more importantly, they have specialized knowledge that can be useful to you. You can best access them through our Ask the Expert link, which you'll see in the chat and is on this PowerPoint slide, which we'll be distributing along with the recording of this webinar. That's the way that we can best direct your question to the appropriate consultant who can assist you. I am now going to pass the program to Noemi Emmerich Ford, Regional Brownfield Administrator for Region 9. Noemi?
Hi, thank you. I'm Noemi Emmerich Ford, and I'm with US EPA. I'm our Regional Brownfields Coordinator, and just wanted to introduce kind of what EPA does. Next slide, Claire. So our team is Brownfields and Land Revitalization, and most of you on the phone are familiar with our funding, but just wanted to touch on some of the things that we do within our program. It's not only that we provide funding, but we also provide technical assistance. One of the ways is through Center for Creative Land Recycling as our grantee. We also help to eliminate barriers to land revitalization. We encourage meaningful community involvement and allow for our grant funds to be spent on that. Obviously promote green cleanups and sustainable redevelopment, and then also foster equitable development for our projects. And then just to give you an idea, which we're going to talk about today in the part 2 of this session, is these are the different funding resources that EPA provides. And it's just to give you an idea that we, in thinking about brownfields, the resources that we have can touch on the full circle of getting to revitalization, not just through identifying sites, through the environmental site assessments, through the planning, cleanup, and then helping you in the revitalization planning. Next slide. And so this is our team. So Adrienne Priselect is our manager of our larger Brownfields and Toxics team. I'm the regional Brownfields coordinator. Nova Blage, Jose Garcia, Lisa Hanusiak, Kelly Garbach, Eric Bayous, Scott Stolman, and Richie Donahue. And so on the next slide, you can see here that we have all of our names, our information, both contact via phone and email. And then to the corner, I guess that would be to your left or to your right, that just gives you an idea of who to contact. So if you're in Nevada, you would contact Lisa Hanusiak. She covers the state of Nevada or Arizona, Jose, myself for Hawaii, the Pacific Islands, or Southern California. But this will just give you more details. And since you're getting the slide, so you would know who to contact from our US EPA team. And that's it. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Noemi. We really value our collaboration with you and your team at EPA. Next, we're going to hear from John Valnick, who's the manager of equity and resilience programs at GROUNDWORK USA. GROUNDWORK does cutting edge environmental justice work under an EPA Equitable Development and Environmental Justice to Brownfield Communities Technical Assistance Grant. And CCLR is a subawardee on the grant and partners with GROUNDWORK to provide technical assistance and develop workshops. We invited them so you could meet their team and hear about their resources. John?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for that introduction, Jean. As Jean said, my name is John Valanche. I'm with GROUNDWORK USA. Today, I'll be sharing a bit more about our equitable development technical assistance, how we center equity in the work that we do. Next slide, please. So today, I'm going to cover just kind of intro to GROUNDWORK USA and our Brownfields team. I'll highlight our free technical assistance offering, as well as the available tools and resource through GROUNDWORK. So GROUNDWORK USA is a national enterprise with local roots. We work at the intersection of environment, equity, and civic engagement to transform the natural and built environment of low resource communities. GROUNDWORK USA's mission is to bring about the sustained regeneration, improvement, and management of the physical environment by developing community-based partnerships that empower people, businesses, and organizations to promote environmental, economic, and social well-being. As you can see from the map of the 22 local affiliate trusts on your left, GROUNDWORK USA works from coast to coast with many communities to help envision, plan, and implement a new path forward for communities impacted by historic harm, including the harm of brownfields. Next slide, please. And so here's the Brownfields team. That's Kate Mangoya up top. She's the director of capacity building. To the bottom left, Jaleesa Gilmore, who some on this call heard from earlier, my co-colleague and manager of equity and resilience programs. And as I said, I'm John Valanche, also a manager of equity and resilience programs. We have our contact information here. We'll also share that on the final slide as well. Next slide, please. And so what do we actually do? How do we do this equitable development and brownfield work? Well, GROUNDWORK USA leads community-based planning, development, and stewardship of parks, greenways, and urban natural areas to help communities think through and implement plans to transform blighted and neglected land into green assets. Really, the priority is about centering and uplifting community needs, connecting them with the resources, skills, and contacts to move their plans forward. And we really center and prioritize equity in these affairs and know that it matters to help redress histories of injustice, to respond directly to community needs, and to build stronger, more stable solutions by having a wide network of stakeholder engagement and buy-in throughout the process. And so with the one-on-one technical assistance that GROUNDWORK USA provides, we provide, as Claire mentioned, it's free technical assistance through a grant from the EPA. One key highlight is really about our ability to bring together a variety of stakeholders, including municipalities, nonprofits, and community groups to build really strong partnerships to carry the work over the finish line and to inform the work that we do. We seek to assist clients to help them think about how to incorporate equity and environmental justice into each and every aspect of the brownfield land reuse process. So there's a number of things that we do as we provide this one-on-one technical assistance. You can see them here, but it includes helping communities build capacity to integrate equity and environmental justice, fostering inclusive and dynamic community engagement, helping folks build vision, understand shared and democratic decision-making processes, helping them set, evaluate, and communicate progress on their actual goals, right? So how do you not only envision an equitable process and center environmental justice in community, but make sure you're tracking it along the way to make sure you're doing it. We work with communities to help them build up resilience in the face of climate change. We've worked with communities and are currently working with communities to develop area-wide plans to help them think through a holistic approach to community and economic development. And finally, and among other things, we partner with our TAB providers, including CCLR, to ensure that we're really connecting folks with all of the available resources in their area. In addition to that one-on-one catered technical assistance, GROUNDWORK USA provides some resources, which you see here. We have on our website a visual resource library of a number of guides, curricula, reports, and other publications to help communities think through their work. We also offer a series of workshops and trainings to help communities build capacity to incorporate equitable development and environmental justice into their work. We'll have our next one, as a matter of fact, on November 18th. Keep an eye out for social media promotion on that. And as I said, we also do technical assistance to 25 clients nationwide based on the needs of those clients. We'll share the sign-up form for that in a minute. And so, as I was saying, these resources, and these are the ones we will share in just a moment. There they are. Thank you, Devin. From the Visual Resource Library, the Brown to Blooming Guide. This really takes folks from the early stages of thinking about brownfield remediation, how to contact lease and landowners, all the way through the final stages of brownfield remediation and community visioning to understand what you want to do with that land. There's our technical assistance request form. Again, this is free thanks to a grant from the EPA, and we are currently accepting clients. So check out our website, check out the resources. And if you'd like to work with us, send us a request. And finally, if you'd like to hear more tailored news about GROUNDWORK USA's Brownfield program, sign up for the newsletter using that link in the comments. And as I mentioned, workshops and trainings, we're doing 12 in this next year. As I said, the next one on November 18th will be coming up, so keep an eye out for that. And so, like I said, if you've got a project in mind, you can reach out to Kate Mangoya, GWUSA Gilmore, or myself at these emails, or if you already have an idea of what you want to do, shoot us a request on that technical assistance request form. Thanks to you all for being here tonight. Thanks to CCLR for the opportunity, the EPA for the grant funding and assistance, and to all of you for being committed to your land, to your people, to your projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. That was excellent. We're going to start moving into breakouts now, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And before I send you all into breakouts, I just want to show you quickly how they're going to work. So I'm going to share my screen again and just show you an example of a jam board. Just give me one moment. Okay. Just opening one up for you here. There we go. Okay. Right. Share. Okay. So this is an example. Let me make this bigger for you of what a jam board looks like. So this is for the Arizona one. So what's going to happen is you're all going to go into breakout rooms. I'm going to press a button and you've all been pre-assigned. So you're all going to go to this breakout room. your assigned breakout room based on the state that you reside in or selected. And then our CCLR breakout room facilitator is going to chat the link to the Jamboard. You're going to click on that link and it's going to open up this Jamboard, and then you can all add to it. You can add your thoughts, your ideas, your questions, your resources. The way you're going to do that is you're going to select this button over here on the left. It's a sticky note button. You're going to click that. This box is going to pop up. You're going to type something. Click save, and then your sticky note is going to pop up. You can take that sticky note and you can move it wherever you want, okay? And you can change the size. So that's how Jamboard works. That's how we're going to be collaborating. Your CCLR facilitator is going to be discussing and facilitating the conversation. And we really encourage you to turn your video on and engage in some conversation. This is not meant to be a silent activity. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and send you all to breakout rooms.
Welcome back, everybody, from your breakout room. I hope you were able both to connect with people and to answer some of the questions we had up on the Jamboard. That's really valuable information that we've collected from you, and we'll make that available. Some of the things that we discussed in the California was to remember that there's so many different stages of development. There's an important timeline for this, and to keep people's interest and momentum is really important. People wanted more information about green remediation strategies and techniques, and what are more innovative ways that people are looking at on-site remediation and layering different funding aspects. So those are all ways that CCLR can support you through. If you have questions, we meet you where you're at. So if you have questions, whether you're early stage, middle stage, or ready for redevelopment and looking for developers, we're really interested in working with you at different phases of your redevelopment work. So we hope each of you got something out of and were able to connect with people from your state in the breakout room, and really want to thank our state partners for their participation. We really appreciate, as I said, your insights and comments, and we'll share the Jamboard with you. Before I pass the program to Ignacio and Noemi to talk about the MARC grant funding, I just want to share with you some upcoming events that we hope that you'll engage with us on. The first is the Redevelopment Rodeo. I'm not much for the bucking bronco language that we use to promote the Redevelopment Rodeo, but I have seen the value to municipalities who have applied to pitch a site at the National Brownfields Conference. This will be our third year, and we hope you'll consider applying. If you are selected to present, and there'll be 3 communities that will be selected nationally, you'll get up to about $10,000 in pro bono assistance from the National TAP Network. And we believe that there's value just in the application process, which we can help you through. It will help you really focus in on your project, its strengths and weaknesses, and how to develop a pitch to a group of experts to see where they can support you. So do consider, if you're attending the National Brownfields Conference, to apply. KSU is hosting a webinar on EnviroAtlas, interactive mapping and data tool. We hope you'll register and attend that. And lastly, there are 2 webinars being offered by the Redevelopment Academy, Risky Business, Overcoming Challenges to Attracting Investment in Brownfield Sites, on October 15th, and Show Me How, Brownfield Redevelopment in Economically Distressed Areas, on November 19th. So you'll get these slides and you'll be able to use them to go ahead and register. So lastly, just take a moment to follow us, connect with us on social media platforms. I'd really like to thank Claire Weston, our Program and Operations Manager, for organizing and managing today's webinar with you. And I want to make sure that everybody did get to see Rachel Ross, who manages our newsletters and our case studies. If you have a blog or a news item, or if you want more information on the kinds of case studies that we have developed, many of them look at your successes. We want you to explore a new website that we'll be launching shortly. Just in closing, I just want to acknowledge, it has been a difficult year and a half and continues to be for many, but it's really your continued commitment to healthier, resilient communities that inspires and inform our work. And we really thank you for your efforts and the work that you're doing. Please do reach out to CCLR. We're your go-to resource for all things revitalization, and we'll meet you where you're at and direct you to where you need to go. And with that, I will pass it over to the second half of our program to Ignacio Noemi to talk about MARC grant funding.
Thank you. Just loading our presentation here. Just a moment, I can't find it all of a sudden. Where is it? Well, Noemi, maybe you can start speaking while I'm looking for our presentation here because it's playing tricks on me. All right, got it. Come on, share. Oh, where'd it go?
Noemi, you're on mute.
Sorry, thanks, Claire. Ignacio and I are going to try to give you a quick overview of the MARC grants. And so my remarks in the beginning will be very quick, as I want to have Ignacio spend time on giving you the ins and outs on how to write a successful application. Kind of what are the things that you should be doing and things that you should let go of and maybe not put in your application for this year. So next slide. So just to give you kind of the formal definition of brownfields, for those who might not be familiar with brownfields, it's a property where the expansion or redevelopment is complicated by the presence or potential presence of contamination. So the idea is a site you may think it's not being redeveloped because people think it's contaminated, but you find out through using our funding that in fact it's not contaminated and can lead the way for redevelopment. And so what we're really focused on with our brownfields grants is trying to find sites where there can be some incentives, such as obviously recycling land, or where you already have leveraged redevelopment funding, where there's already infrastructure in place to do the development. So a lot of infill development or Main Street development are really things that are priorities for our brownfields program, particularly in vulnerable or environmental justice communities, those who have been disproportionately impacted. Next slide. So because we love acronyms at US EPA, our acronym for our brownfields grants is MARC, which stands for Multi-Purpose Assessment, Revolving Loan Fund, and Cleanup. And each year, every other year, one year we provide for multi-purpose grants, another year it's Revolving Loan Fund. This year it happens to land on Revolving Loan Fund. So the acronym is ARC, which is Assessment, Revolving Loan Fund, and Cleanup. And this is the RFP that is open, the request for proposals, which is open now, and the applications are due on December 1st. Next slide. And so just to give you an idea of the 3 grant programs that are where the request for proposals is open now, the first is our assessment grant. If you've looked at the guidelines that have come out for that, there's about $47 million that's going to be available for this particular grant type. It's probably our most popular grant type and hence therefore the most competitive. Within our assessment grant program, there are 2 different kinds of grants that you can apply for. One is a community-wide assessment, or the other is a site-specific assessment. $500,000 for a community-wide, and site-specific the same. So or 350, sorry. So with our environmental assessment grants, kind of inherent in the name, you can conduct phase 1 assessments, you can conduct phase 2, risk assessments, APCA. If you are planning to apply for one of the assessment grants, just know that you'll be ranked higher if you spend 60% or more of your budget on actual environmental work. Funds can be used for planning for redevelopment. So you can see the list of things there that you can do in terms of planning, your program management expenses, you as the applicant overseeing the grant, and of course, community engagement are also activities that you can use. And then for the states, I'm sure they're going to love to hear this, you can use funding to pay for state oversight fees. Next slide. And just to kind of, for those who aren't familiar with Brownfields, our assessment grant program does not have a cost share. So you do not have to have any match or funds for this grant, but to be more competitive, you would need to show leveraging, that you do have resources available for remediation and or for redevelopment. With our cleanup grant, $13 million is available for our cleanup grants. For our cleanup grants, you do need to own the site. So you cannot conduct a cleanup on behalf of another entity. So for all of our grants, states, tribes, and units of government are eligible to apply. With our cleanup grants, you can do the planning leading up to the remediation. Again, programmatic expenses can be included, health monitoring, institutional controls, environmental insurance. There's a lot of things that can be included in the cleanup grant. Both grants are 3-year grants. And with the cleanup grants, it's $500,000, if I didn't mention that. And you can apply for either one site to be cleaned up with $500,000, ask for a waiver up to $650,000, or you can apply for multiple sites to be cleaned up with the $500,000. Next slide. So our revolving loan fund grant is this year. The grant is only eligible to those who do not have a current revolving loan fund grant. So we're trying to get this grant spread across to a variety of different entities. If you're on the webinar and you have a revolving loan fund grant, there will be opportunities for you to get more money into your grant program. So it's given as a grant to you, but then you would then use this as kind of an incentive in your toolbox with private developers, other units of government, or nonprofits to get remediation done. And so if you're working with a nonprofit or another unit of government, you can give them what are called forgivable loans or subgrants. For private parties, this would be you giving them loans, and it can be up to 0% interest. You decide. Next slide. So Ignacio, I'll turn this over to you. I think this was...
Right. So this is an example of looking at the big picture. When you're going through, I want to think through these grants, is that you start with plans and partners, gather your stakeholders, engage them, set your redevelopment goals. And I'll go into this more detail in the next few slides. And then you progress to phase 1s and phase 2s and clean up if necessary. And notice that those covered by yellow are things you can do in an assessment grant. And those are things you can do with an RLF and a cleanup grant. And to revitalize, you need leverage funds. So that's just a big picture of how the money goes in comparison to the flow of the typical development process. Of course, it's more complicated than this, and sometimes this is circular, but this is the bigger picture of how you put all these activities in context. Back to you, Noemi. Oh, you're muted.
So what's different this year for the FY22 guidelines is that for those who are familiar with Brownfields, assessment coalition grants, which have been offered in the past, will not be offered in this cycle. There will be a new community-wide assessment grant that's offered only to states and tribes, and only one state entity can apply within any given state. It's up to $2 million. It's a 5-year grant period. There is no match to this, and it's to conduct assessments across the state, as well as tribes across their territories, or across their tribal nations, or even assisting other tribal entities. So this one will be highly competitive. We're only expecting to award 9 of these grants nationwide. The other new benefit for those who are familiar with, since we're not offering the assessment coalition grant, for those who are familiar with the community-wide assessment grant, as I mentioned earlier, the limit has jumped from $300,000 to $500,000. So it does give you the opportunity, if your local jurisdiction allows for you to conduct assessments outside of your, say, city or county boundaries, then we would allow for that to be included in your application. So if you are a city and want to help surrounding cities around you, which is very similar to what the assessment coalition allowed, you can also do that without having the coalition partners as part of the assessment grant. If you have questions about this, feel free. I provided which you're going to get these slides. I provided contact information, and contact the EPA Brownfields person that works closest in your area, and they'll be able to provide you more details. Again, I mentioned this earlier that our RLF, it's only open to those who are not part of a coalition or not an RLF cooperative agreement recipient. And for those who are a coalition partner or part of an RLF grant, there will be other funding criteria, other funding that will be available to you, and we'll release that criteria sometime soon. And so just lastly, I wanted to, for those who are interested in our funding, we will be having a national webinar that will be held by our Office of Brownfields and Land Revitalization on Wednesday, October the 13th, as well as Thursday, October 14th. The one on the 13th is to talk about the two different kinds of community assessment grant funds, which are community-wide, site-specific, our cleanup and RLF grant. The one on Thursday is specifically for states and tribes to talk about our new grant program. Highly encourage you to participate because our very own Jose Garcia will be one of the presenters at these two national webinars.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Noemi. The chat has a lot of question and answer already. I think they're all being answered. So thank you so much for EPA staff for addressing those. So I'm just going to talk about starting early. You know, these guidelines just came out yesterday, so it's kind of divine that timing is great. We got a sneak peek. And as usual, these are the first things you do very early on to start. And I'm not going to go through a very detailed presentation. There are going to be many more presentations. This is just a preview of what you should be doing. So first is talk about the DUNS and SAMS registration and grants.gov. Be sure that you're set up, and whoever's going to press the send button or apply button has everything in line. Review the guidelines and the FAQs. A lot of the questions you might have are probably already covered in the FAQs. Then going to your project or program. Now, this is a grant program, and many people apply just for the, because it's a grant, they will apply. But think about what you're trying to do, that's sustainable, what you're trying to do is that addresses environmental justice, and any other things that are related to your own initiatives, the economy, jobs, housing. Define that and make it fit into a grant work plan that basically fits in with the brownfields and land in particular. Identify partners and stakeholders. Create a budget and what you need to leverage, and tell your story. You have to tie this all well in together in 10 to 12 pages. So, and you have 2 months to do it. So start doing it now. Regarding your plan, program, and project, again, EPA wants to be sure that you're not acting independent of what your state is doing or what your county is doing. So you want to see what the state plan, if there are any state plans related to what your initiatives are, whether it's climate, it's housing, economic development, diversity and equity. Somewhere, all the states are different. Some states do have sustainability plans and climate action plans, and some states don't. Some states have renewable energy plans, some don't. Same thing with economic development. Almost every community is involved in the SEDS in some way, a comprehensive economic development strategy. So you want to be in touch with that and see what's there. Diversity and equity. There are some cities and states that have diversity, equity, and inclusion plans or initiatives. Look at those. You have infrastructure needs, whether it's regional, state, or local. So and see how this relate to all your projects, your programs. Make them fit into the big picture and see where Brownfields fits in, because somewhere down the line there's going to be some intersection here. And then connect it to your neighborhood and your land assets, and find underutilized properties, because these are brownfields that you can are opportunities for you to prioritize. And lastly, going back into grant terminology, get your outcomes and outputs in line. And I'm going to discuss that now, because what are outcomes and what are outputs? Well, outcomes are more big picture, and you can measure these in terms of how your brownfields relate to these outcomes. For instance, you might need, Number of housing units you want to develop might be an outcome. Number of acres of parks developed could be an outcome. Jobs created could be an outcome. I mean, these things, you don't do these with your Brownfields grant. You do these with other things, with your leverage funds. But your Brownfields can get all these started. Same thing with health outcomes and equity. These are outcomes that you don't necessarily do with Brownfields grants, but these are possible outcomes as a result of your Brownfields outputs. And your outputs, these are your measures of success for your work plan. Is it the number of sites you've assessed, the number of sites you've cleaned up, a number of meetings, outreach efforts, reports, websites, risk assessments? All these are outputs that you can pay through with your Brownfields grants. So again, just to summarize, your outputs help produce outcomes. And outcomes are usually funded by leveraged funds. And that's the big picture here. Have a grant program that produces the outputs that helps you get your favorable outcomes. So here's just an example based on many years of reviewing grant applications. When you're writing a grant, you want to be concrete in defining your success in your measurable success in outcomes or outputs. For instance, when you're discussing benefits to public welfare, some people would write general terms that anyone can claim. Anyone can claim they can develop more affordable housing or eliminate a food desert, but that's really vague. You want to be more specific, like for affordable housing, you will create X number of affordable units in a neighborhood based on a certain density that is in a housing plan and a zoning ordinance. So that's concrete. For a food desert, you will create urban agriculture sites, or you will create partnerships that will help distribute foods that are grown in former brownfields, and you'll create the partnerships that make those linkages work. Those are concrete outcomes and outputs. For health, a better health outcome. Again, that's very vague, and I've seen that in very many grant applications. But when you say you can decrease asthma because you're reducing the exposure, or you're increasing vegetation, or you're improving access to recreational opportunities, that's a better health outcome, and that's a concrete example of a better health outcome. For the environment, reduce threats to residents. Well, again, you reduce threats to residents by assessing sites and cleaning up sites, or reducing exposure to uses or threats that are on those sites that you're cleaning up. Reducing blight is pretty much the same way. You reduce blight by creating partnerships with retail, recreation, to the number of sites you're cleaning up. Benefit to the economy. Again, don't be vague. Be more concrete, like bringing in X number of jobs based on some measure that you've experienced and connect opportunities for leveraging funds like opportunity zones or other state grant programs you have. So that's kind of the one-on-one on how to be more concrete rather than being abstract. Again, start early. Starting early means developing the vision for your site and how it fits into that big picture. Again, get your plans and make your site or your neighborhood or your target area fit in. Who are the stakeholders that are involved there, and where are the links to the economic, community, environmental benefits, so you can catalyze the reuse. In your work plan, again, that's where your partners and stakeholders, because they bring things to the table. You can leverage their efforts, or they might be able to help you leverage funding. Based on that, you can figure out what your budget will look like, and then tell your story. You have to be a good writer here. Good writer means you need a good editor, a copy editor, and many eyes on your grant application. You're not going to do this by drafting your grant and sending it to CCLR 2 days before the grant is due. Doesn't work that way. Send it early, and CCLR, we do this for free, so send it early and often. as Jean said, we do improve your chances the more we review it. Here are some key websites. There are many other key websites in those FAQs and in the webinars that you're going to be watching, because this is not the only webinar you're going to have to watch. You're going to have to watch many more. But so one is to just, if you want to get an idea of what the grants look like, if you're new to it, you can go to the tab Easy or KSU tab, and under the resources, there's a drop down with recent examples, recent and old examples of successful grant applications. Tab Easy is also there for drafting if you like to be being prompted. The only our advice there though is don't rely on Tab Easy and just export it to Word and think that you're done. You have to reformat it because Tab Easy does not do a good work of job of formatting. It has a lot of wasted space because it's not an editing program. Environmental justice and climate change are very big this year, and so the Justice 40 initiative, which is in Executive Order 14008, Section 223. There's a link into some of those documents. Read it, because if that's upfront in the EPA guidelines, you know it's going to be important. Health indicators are one of the probably toughest things for grant writers. So here are a few links, and get familiar with them. And if you can't find links, especially for very rural communities, get in touch with your public health office or your county health office, or contact CCLR. We'll figure something out. Of course, grants.gov and the guidelines. A word about stakeholders. People have seen these slides before, but don't forget that you need a champion. The champion preferably is someone else in the community that is not your state or regional Brownfields program people or your tab. You need a local champion. We can only do so much. And as far as environmental consultants, again, that's upfront in the guidelines this year. Be very careful. I mean, we do encourage working with consultants because they really know, help you with your work plan. But the guidelines are very clear in what you should do when you're working with consultants pre and post, during this grant application process. And again, lastly, don't forget about CCLR reviews. I mentioned this before. It's free, doubles your chances. Start early. Don't. Usually, we do most of our work at CCLR like 3 weeks out, 3 to 1 week out, but spread it out and make it easy on everyone. And think big and beyond, especially for those $2 million grant states. Start gathering your partners and thinking about what your priority projects are. If you're ready now, we do have some time to review some of the grants that maybe is sitting on your shelf, or maybe you applied last couple of years and weren't successful. We can start working with you now. So that is my presentation, and happy to answer questions now. Any questions? Let's see. Let's look at the. So we answered the question about the risk assessments. Any other questions we haven't answered there?
I have a question, Ignacio.
Hi, Echo.
Hi. I'm wondering about the environmental justice funding from DTSC, for example. Do you have kind of a strategy for sussing out what grants you can apply to simultaneously, or what are mutually exclusive, or how do they all interact with each other?
Well, okay, I'm sure EPA will respond to it. Just for those who are not in California, the Department of Toxic Substances Control also has a grant program coming out almost the same time. One thing that the DTSC program does not do is clean up lead and asbestos. So if you have a lead and asbestos issue, of course, we all want to dig clean dirt. But if you need to clean up a building, DTSC program is not for you. I think you should apply to both, personally speaking, because we want a chunk of both of those things. So I'm sure the other states might say, California, don't apply for EPA, but apply because because we want our share of the pot too. I mean, that's my thought. And if anyone else has an opinion, please speak up now. I think might have some DTSC folks on the line. Any other questions? Come on. We couldn't have answered all your questions.
Well, I can make a comment, Ignacio. So nice to see you. And thank you for your wonderful review of this funding cycle. But I would just like to tell folks that a few years ago, we filled out a big grant, which we later backed out of. But Ignacio was so amazing how he reviewed it and gave us feedback. And we felt very, very empowered having that resource there for us. So I encourage people to take advantage of him.
And we do have a big team now, so it's I got backup, so it's even going to be better.
All right.
Hey, Mr. Ignacio, quick question. My name is Eddie with the city of Bullhead City, and I'm representing Toby. The only question I will have is, you did mention if you have a building, standalone building, you should not apply for the EAC, or how did you call it?
The DTSC, that's a California program, so that's not available in Arizona.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so
no problem.
Yeah. So definitely, yeah, Bullhead City. We drove by. When we did a road trip there with not Travis, but his predecessor. So there's a lot of potential there. So yes, please do apply.
And Eddie, this is Travis. Give me a call. I can help you out on questions on which direction you might want to go if it's a standalone building.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Hey, Ignacio, it's Joelle. Do you want to talk to everybody about if you have a grant and you want to apply for another grant? Like, how much do you have to have spent down in your first grant?
Right. So if you have a current assessment grant, you need to spend 70% by drawn down 70% of your grant by October 1st. So you got 1 week to spend up to 70% of your money. So don't spend it on me. All right. Any other questions? I mean, I can go a bit deeper into the review, a quick review we did. Yeah, the EPA is really putting more emphasis in doing phase 1 and phase 2, environmental assessments. I think that threshold that Noemi mentioned, 60%, used to be lower than that. I think the 60% is new this year, so there's some more emphasis on doing phase 1s and phase 2s. Another thing, so unless we have questions, I'll just keep on babbling on, or people, we can. I can give you half your,
Ignacio, there is a question.
All right.
On page 31 of the guidance, under the threshold for state tribal assessment grant applications, it has a bullet for documentation of the available balance on each open assessment grant and multi-purpose grant. Is that a typo, since the 70% drawdown requirement doesn't apply to the state tribal assessment grant?
Yes, I will let EPA respond. Yes. Will someone from EPA respond? I don't know if that applies to the STRP.
Ignacio, this is Jose. I'm looking at the guidelines right now. Give me a second.
And to those who aren't familiar, STRP are the grants that are given directly to the states for their 128A programs.
People are also asking for the name of their state contact to get their letters of support. I believe that's the question that says, will CCLR provide state tribal contact information to participants?
Yes, so I will put in the contact for Hawaii, because I don't know if anyone from Hawaii made it here, but
If anybody else is a state program and you are the point person to provide that support letter, please put your contact information in the chat.
Okay, any more questions?
So, I mean, overall, the guidelines don't seem that different from last year. There is a greater emphasis on environmental justice and climate, so do consider those aspects. Just in terms of tips, in terms of having read any of these, number of these applications, and where Ignacio keeps reminding us as we look over applications with them, is just be responsive to what EPA wants in the section where they're asking it. It doesn't seem like a very big tip, but it's one that we see over and over where you're not responding to what they're asking you to answer in that particular section. So when you start going through the application, you might want to take a form that we help complete and look at that as well as you start drafting your application. But as Ignacio said, be as specific and responsive as you can. And we really like to see more money come in to Region 9. So please, as Ignacio said, start early and be in touch with CCLR.
And I'll just give another testimonial about CCLR. This is Travis. Their work gets results. So we were able to get several coalition grants or other individual grants because they sent them to CCLR to have them reviewed and early in the process. So they did some back and forth several times. And sure enough, those are ones that I saw next spring that got awarded. So they're not just blowing smoke, they get results for you. So use their resource, please.
Thank you, Travis. Oh, your beer.
Thank you, Nevada, for putting in your contact information, Ruben, with his contact information.
I had a quick question about the 70% drawdown for the cleanup grant. I did not see a reference to that in the cleanup guidelines.
Yeah, not for the cleanup. That's only for assessment.
Okay. Thank you.
Ignacio, this is Jose with EPA. There does seem to be some on that 70% question, some conflicting information because in the guidelines, I believe, give me one second where it is, on page 2, it does state that this requirement does not apply with a 70% drawdown, does not apply to entities applying for the FY22 community-wide assessment grants for states and tribes. So if you have a grant and you're a state or a tribe and you're applying for the state and tribe community-wide assessment, it does not look like you have to have the 70% drawdown, but there is some conflicting information there. I would say you can email us, myself, to confirm. I'd have to check with Noemi and headquarters. I'll put in my email address into the chat. And if there's further clarification needed, feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you, Jose. All right. Well, I think we're running out of questions. I think, again, encourage everyone to attend the coming webinars because there's going to be plenty. And I think for many people, you know, it's actually, it just reinforces what you know, and as well, you're not missing anything because, you know, many of the old timers, I guess, they know this stuff, but if you're newer, you probably have to listen to it more than a couple of times to have a comfort level that you are, you know, you're preparing the grant as well as you can. Go ahead, Travis.
For the people that weren't in the Arizona breakout room, Scott Stolman brought up a very good point, and we have an example in Arizona. He had talked about not to forget about the EBA. You know, I know it was a quick slide in the presentation, but the Targeted Brownfields Assistance Grant, that's a great way to get things started if you're working with a community that's not quite ready to get full on brownfields. It's a great introductory. An example of that is in Gila County, which is a bunch of mining towns. They got a TBA to start out with one of their mining communities, and 2 years later, now they're got a coalition grant for the whole area. So it was they got their feet wet, they got used to how that works. So I just wanted to bring that up because I thought that was a good example by Scott to talk about the TBA.
Thanks. All right, so Jean, I think you can, Jean's out on the East Coast, so she probably wants a...
So thank you all for attending. I hope this was a useful introduction to your Brownfield team and to the MAC grants. We hope you will be in touch with us as you have questions. We're here to help support you. Thank you for the whole CCLR team for being on this webinar and supporting it, and be in touch with us. Good night. Everyone stay well, and we hope to see you at the National Brownfields Conference in Oklahoma as well.